All right, welcome to another deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
This time, we're going to be looking at something a lot of us think about. Changing careers.
Yeah.
Finding that work that really makes you feel, like you're where you should be.
Yeah.
So we've got a cool mix of stuff to work with today. We've got, like a kind of practical book with all these strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've also got some audio that kind of goes into, like, the deeper side of this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a rich topic because it really does touch on both those things. It's like there's the practical steps, figuring out how to make the transition. But then there's this whole other layer of like, what does it even mean to find work that you love?
Yeah, totally. So the book starts off by talking about, like, 3 different ways you could, make this career change happen. Each one's got its own kind of, pluses and minuses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always good to have options. And I think the important thing to remember right from the start is that there's no like one size fits all approach. What works for one person might be totally different for someone else.
Right, for sure. So the first one they talk about is like full-time retraining. So you leave your job
Mm-hmm.
and you just go all in on learning new skills.
Yeah, that's definitely like a big commitment, right? But, if you've got the resources and you're really, really driven, it lets you just, totally immerse yourself in the new field, right?
Yeah.
Become an expert.
Like you just dive in head first.
Yeah, exactly.
Then there's part-time new work. So that's where you keep your current job.
Yeah.
For that stability.
Yeah, makes sense.
And you kind of, start doing a little bit of the new work on the side.
Right, so you can kind of get your feet wet, right, where you see what it's really like.
Exactly, like test it out.
Yeah, and I think that can be really helpful for people who, aren't ready to just quit their job and, jump into something completely new.
Right, yeah. You get to build up some experience, meet some people in the field,
Mm-hmm.
kind of see if it's really a good fit before you go all in.
Yeah. And then the last one is, it's kind of like a mix of the first two.
Okay.
So it's like part-time training, A&D part-time work in the new field.
Oh, so you're kind of doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
interesting.
you're like constantly learning A&D, getting that real-world experience.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense. But I guess it could also be super rewarding, right? You get to kind of apply what you're learning right away.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So this is where it gets really interesting. The audio we have brings up something that it's like it connects with this idea of finding work that you really love, but from a totally different angle.
Okay.
It talks about what happens when people have dreams they never go after. Like, not just for them, but like for their families and even like society as a whole. Oh, wow. That's a perspective you don't hear every day.
Mm.
Yeah, we usually just think about, how it affects the individual person.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that there are these like ripple effects.
Yeah. So they actually quote Carl Jung,
Oh, wow.
the psychologist. And he says, nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment and especially on their children than the unlived life of their parents.
Wow. That's that's pretty powerful. It really makes you think.
It really does.
Like, are we setting a good example for our kids?
Right.
Are we showing them that it's okay to go after what they want?
Yeah, or we just, kind of like settling.
Right. And kind of,
Right.
teaching them that that's what they should do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like we're passing down this, this feeling of, I don't know, like unfulfilled potential or something.
Yeah. And that can affect, like, generations.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so let's get a little more practical here. The book talks about, really assessing your skills, like figuring out what you're good at.
Uh-huh.
And they break it down into 3 main areas: ability, credibility, and marketability.
I like that. It's a good way to kind of organize your thoughts, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they think about changing careers, they're just like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you can break it down into these like manageable chunks, it's less overwhelming.
Yeah, totally. So ability is like, can you actually do the work?
Right. The basic stuff. Right.
Yeah, like, do you have the skill? Do you have the knowledge?
Mm-hmm. And the experience.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be honest with yourself, right? If you want to be a surgeon, but, you've never even held a scalpel before, you got some work to do.
Yeah, exactly. And then credibility is like, do people like believe you can do it? Do you have the credentials or, whatever it takes to like be taken seriously?
Yeah, like, can you back it up, right? Do you have the degree, the certifications, or, maybe even just a proven track record in the field?
Yeah. And then marketability is like, how well can you, present yourself and your skills to the world?
Right. So it's not just about having the skills. It's about being able to, like, communicate them effectively, right?
Like,
Like build your personal brand, tell your story in a way that resonates with people.
exactly. And the book uses this example of a geologist. She's got her PhD,
Wow.
so she's definitely got the credibility.
Yeah, a PhD, that's huge, especially in a field like geology.
Right. But she's been out of the field for a while, so her skills are a little rusty.
Oh, okay, so she's got to catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Things change so fast these days.
Right, exactly. So she needs to, maybe brush up on some general knowledge, take some courses, maybe find a mentor, get some like hands-on experience.
Yeah, it's like even if you were at the top of your game at one point, you got to keep learning, to stay relevant.
Yeah, totally. Now, speaking of skills, this idea of transferable skills
Hmm.
is super interesting to me.
Hmm.
It's like we learn all these skills in one area of our life. Yeah.
But they can be useful in so many other areas too.
Oh, totally. We get so focused on specific job titles, in industry jargon,
Right.
but like so many of the skills we learn are actually like universally valuable.
Yeah. The book uses John W. Gardner as an example. He worked in government, activism, philanthropy,
Wow, that's quite a range.
like so different. But it's fascinating to think about what those roles have in common.
Yeah. What is it that allowed him to move so smoothly between all those different worlds?
Right, exactly.
Like, what were the common threads?
Yeah. And it's things like, leadership,
Yeah.
communication, problem solving.
Right, thinking strategically,
Yeah.
being able to bring people together, inspire them.
Yes.
Like, those are skills that are gold in any field.
Yeah, totally. So if you're thinking about changing careers, you don't have to get stuck on what your last job title was.
Right, exactly. You can look at those underlying skills,
Yeah.
see how
Yeah.
they could be applied in a whole new way. Yeah, it's like, what are you really good at? What are those superpowers that you bring to the table?
Yeah.
Maybe you're a master organizer. Maybe you're like incredibly persuasive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you're a creative problem solver. Like those skills, they can be your ticket to something totally new.
Exactly. They're your foundation. You can build on that foundation and create a career that you love in any field that speaks to you.
Yeah. All right. So let's get real for a second. Changing careers. It can be scary,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like there are doubts, fears, maybe even people in your life who aren't so supportive.
Mm-hmm.
So the book talks about the importance of having a support system,
Yeah.
people who believe in you.
Yeah, for sure. Having people in your corner can make all the difference. Like when you're feeling discouraged or, like you want to give up.
Totally. They even talk about something called growth-based relationships. What do you think that
I
means?
guess it means like surrounding yourself with people who, they don't just like you for who you are now,
Yeah.
but they like see your potential and they want to see you grow and evolve.
Yeah, like they're invested in your journey.
Yeah. They're your cheerleaders, your mentors, your sounding boards. They help you figure things out.
Yeah. And it's not just emotional support, right?
Right.
They can like connect you with people, offer advice, help you brainstorm.
Totally. It's like they're part of your team, and you're all working towards the same goal, which is, you living your best life.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so sometimes you can't just leap into your dream career right away. Okay, maybe you need to learn new stuff, save up money, or, just kind of test the waters first.
Right. It's not always a straight shot.
Yeah. So what does the book say about like making the most of that in-between time? When you're not quite where you want to be yet.
Well, I think the key is to like not see your current job as, just something you have to endure,
Right.
but to like try to find ways to make it meaningful, even if it's not your dream job.
Yeah, like how can you learn and grow in your current role?
Exactly. Even if it's not directly related to what you want to do in the future, there are always opportunities to like expand your skill set, build relationships, just kind of like be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, totally. The book suggests things like, keep learning new things, take on new challenges,
Mm-hmm.
build good relationships with the people you work with,
Yeah, those are all great.
and like find ways to use your unique skills and talents, even if it's in small ways.
Right, because even if you're not in your dream job, you can still make a difference, and you can still feel good about the work you're doing.
Yeah, totally. And that can make like a huge difference in your overall, happiness and well-being.
For sure. It's like instead of just waiting for the perfect opportunity to come along, you're like actively creating a more fulfilling life for yourself right now.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
for those of you who are listening, and you're thinking about changing careers, but you're not sure if you're ready for, the full leap, The book has some cool ideas for what they call milder gradients.
Milder gradients, huh? I like that.
Yeah, it's like, instead of jumping off a cliff, you're kind of like easing your way down a gentle slope.
Oh, okay, I get it. It's like a less drastic
Yeah,
approach.
exactly. So they talk about things like, part-time work in a field that you're interested in,
Mm,
volunteering for a cause that you care about,
yeah.
or, even just supporting existing organizations that, are doing work that aligns with your values.
Oh, that's a good one. Like, you don't necessarily have to start something new from scratch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can just, plug into something that's already happening and contribute your skills and your passion.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk a little more about volunteer work. Both of our sources mention it as like a really powerful tool.
Yeah, it's funny how, we often think of volunteering as something we do for others, right?
Right.
But it can actually be incredibly beneficial for us, too.
Totally.
It's a chance to, like, explore different fields, gain new experiences, meet people, and, like, just feel good about making a difference.
Yeah. The audio specifically mentions the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps Vista as examples of, like really immersive volunteer
Yeah,
experiences.
those are great programs.
Like Peace Corps, you're, going to another country.
Yeah, and really, like, immersing yourself in a different culture.
Yeah. And AmeriCorps Vista, you're working on like social issues here in the U.S.
Right, so you can kind of choose your adventure based on, what you're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. And both of those programs, they offer like a modest living allowance. And, you're making a serious commitment.
Mm-hmm.
But the rewards, in terms of personal growth, making a difference, they can be huge.
Yeah, for sure. And even if you don't do something that's structured, there are so many opportunities to volunteer in your own community.
Totally. Yeah. You can work with kids, seniors, the environment, whatever you're passionate about.
Right, there's something for everyone. And, not to be too practical about it, but it also looks good on a resume, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It shows employers that you're a go-getter, you're passionate, you're committed to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So let's imagine our listener is like, all right, I'm ready to do this. What's the first step? Where do they begin?
I think both the book and the audio really emphasize the importance of self-assessment. Like, you got to start by understanding yourself,
Okay. But where do you even begin with that?
Right. It can feel overwhelming, right? Like,
Yeah.
who am I? What am I good at? That kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
But, there are some, like, really practical things you can do. The book talks about journaling, talking to people who are already doing the work that you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even taking, like, a personality test or a skills assessment.
Oh, yeah. Those can be really helpful.
Yeah, they can give you, like, a more objective view of yourself.
Oh, boy.
And then once you have a better understanding of, like, your strengths, your weaknesses, what you really want,
Yeah.
then you can start to explore different career options.
Yeah, and there are so many resources out there to help you do that, right?
Or absolutely. The book talks about career centers, libraries, online databases, and of course, networking is huge.
Oh, networking is so important. Talk to people in your network.
Yeah,
Reach out to people in fields that you're interested in.
exactly. You never know who might be able to, offer you some advice or connect you with someone.
Yeah, totally. The book also, you know, really stresses the importance of finding a career that, like, aligns with your values.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial. You're going to be spending a lot of time at work.
Right.
You want to make sure it's something that you believe in, that you feel good about.
Yeah, totally. So what about those times when you're feeling stuck? Like you're in a job that's not fulfilling,
Mm.
but, you're not quite ready to make that leap yet.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, like, stay motivated, keep your spirits up?
Well, the audio actually has some really good advice on this. They talk about how to love what you do until you're doing what you love.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's about like finding those little things in your current job that bring you joy,
Yeah.
and focusing on those. Like maybe you have a great team that you work with, or maybe there's a particular project that you're really excited about. Like just try to find those bright spots and, let those fuel you while you're working towards something bigger.
Yeah, that's a great point. The book also talks about things like, keep learning, take on new challenges. Those things can keep you engaged.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also about like remembering your why, like why are you doing this? What is it that you're ultimately working towards?
Yeah. And that can help you stay focused and motivated.
Totally. It's like when you have a clear vision of where you want to go, it's easier to, weather the storms along the way.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about something that can be a big obstacle for people who are thinking about changing careers.
Hmm.
You know, fear.
Oh, yeah.
Like fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of disappointing people.
It's real.
How do our sources address that?
Well, they both kind of agree that fear is a natural part of the process. Like, it's okay to be scared.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're not on the right track.
Yeah, you're stepping outside your comfort zone. That's going to bring up some fear.
Exactly. The book talks about how a lot of our fear comes from, like, negative self-talk.
Uh-huh.
We
Yeah.
tell ourselves we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we don't have enough experience.
Right. Yeah, that inner critic can be so loud sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. But the audio suggests some really cool techniques for, like, dealing with that fear, like positive affirmations.
Oh, yeah, those are powerful.
They are, and visualization, like, just imagining yourself succeeding, feeling those positive emotions.
Hmm.
It can actually, like, rewire your brain,
Yeah, it's amazing.
And, even if you don't believe it at first, just keep doing it. Fake it till you make it, as they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. The book also talks about the importance of, taking action, like even if it's just small steps.
Oh, totally. It's easy to get stuck in, like, analysis paralysis. You just overthink everything and you never actually do anything.
Right. Yeah. But
Yeah,
action creates momentum.
exactly. And, you're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to have setbacks. That's part of the process.
Like that's how you learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, don't be afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to experiment and just keep moving forward.
I love that. One thing that really stood out to me in the audio was this idea of acting as if.
Oh, yeah. Like, even if you don't feel like you're there yet, you start behaving like the person you want to be.
Exactly. And they use some really cool examples of people who, achieved amazing things,
Hmm.
but they didn't have like the formal education or credentials you might expect.
Oh, yeah. Like those stories that just totally blow your mind.
Yeah. Like Ezra Cornell. He founded Cornell University, but he never even graduated from any school himself.
Wow, that's wild.
And then there's Thomas Edison. He only had 3 weeks of formal education.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But, he was just so curious and driven.
Yeah. And he, like, revolutionized the world with his inventions.
And Grandma Moses, right. Didn't she start painting, like, super late in life?
Yeah. She was in her 70s,
Hmm.
and she became this, like, world-renowned artist.
It's amazing, like proof that it's never too late.
Right. And I think that's what acting as if is all about. Like, you believe in yourself, you take action, and you just start showing up as that person you want to be.
And, the more you do that, the more it becomes your reality.
Yeah, like you start attracting opportunity.
Totally. It's like you're sending out this energy into the universe, and the universe responds.
Yeah, I love that. The book also talks about the importance of, building a strong personal brand.
Oh, yeah. That's huge, especially these days.
Right. Like, what makes you stand out? What's your unique value proposition?
Yeah, and it's not just about, having a fancy logo or a website.
Right.
It's about, like, being authentic, being genuine, and letting your personality shine through.
Yeah, totally.
People can spot a fake a mile away.
Yeah. And they suggest paying attention to things like, your online presence,
Mm.
your professional network,
Yeah.
how you present yourself in interviews and networking situations.
Right. Like, it's all connected.
Yeah, it's like you're creating a story about yourself.
And you want that story to be compelling. You want it to be memorable.
Exactly. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground. Let's take a moment to kind of reflect on what we've learned so far. What are some of the key takeaways that are standing out to you?
Well, I think the biggest one for me is, like, the importance of self-awareness. Like, you got to know yourself before you can, make any real changes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What about you? What's resonating with you the most right now?
I'm really drawn to that idea of acting as if. It's just such a powerful reminder that, like, we have so much more control over our lives than we think we do.
Yeah, and that we can create the reality we want.
Exactly. Like, it's not just about waiting for things to happen to us. We can actually make things happen.
I love that. This has been such a rich and inspiring conversation. I feel like we've just scratched the surface, though.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
But for now, I think it's time for a little break.
Sounds good.
So for those of you listening, take a moment to think about what's resonating with you the most.
Yeah. What's one small step you can take today to move closer to that ideal work life?
We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive.
Can't wait.
Until then, keep those dreams alive.
And keep taking action.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into, changing careers and finding that work that really lights you up. Now, if you're just joining us, be sure to catch the first part of this deep dive to get the whole picture.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff already, like, those practical strategies for actually making a career switch, and also some of those, deeper ideas about what it all means, like the purpose of work and all that.
Yeah, for sure. And there's still so much more to uncover. So in this part, we're going to get into things like, facing those fears that come up, building a personal brand that's truly you, and, how to find meaning in your current job, even if it's not your dream gig, at least not yet.
Right, like those moments when you're feeling kind of stuck, or maybe you're just not sure what the next step is. We'll dig into those, and we'll also explore some ways to keep that motivation going, keep moving forward on your career journey.
Yeah, totally. And, one thing I'm really excited to talk about is that idea of acting as if, which we touched on a little bit last time.
Oh, yeah, that one really stuck with me too. Like, it's such a powerful reminder that, we actually have a lot more power to shape our own reality than we might think.
Yeah, totally. It's about like stepping into that version of yourself that you want to become, even if you're not quite there yet.
Exactly. It's about like aligning who you are on the inside with, what you're putting out there in the world and like believing that you can create the life you want, like really believing it.
So how do we actually start acting as if in a way that feels, real and authentic and empowering? Like, what are some things we can actually do?
I think a good place to start is by like really getting clear on what qualities and behaviors you associate with that ideal version of yourself, like that future you who's already achieved those goals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Like, how does that person think? How do they act? How do they interact with other people?
Exactly. And then, once you have that picture in your mind, you can start to incorporate those qualities and behaviors into your daily life, even if it's just little things at first.
So, for example, like if your ideal self is, super confident and a great communicator, maybe you start practicing public speaking.
Yeah, yeah. Or like, you could join a networking group and push yourself to talk to people in your field.
Right. Or, if being organized and efficient is something you associate with your ideal self, maybe you start by decluttering your workspace.
Uh-huh. Or like you could try out a new time management system or something, like anything that helps you feel more like that person you want to be.
The key is to start somewhere, right? Like take those small steps and build momentum.
Exactly. Each time you act in a way that aligns with that ideal self, you're kind of like reinforcing those qualities and making them more a part of who you are.
The book also talks about building a strong personal brand, especially these days when it's so competitive out there.
Yeah.
Like, how do we create a personal brand that really reflects, who we are and what we stand for?
Right. It's got to be authentic. And I think it starts with being really intentional, like about the message you want to send out to the world. What are those unique strengths and talents that you bring to the table? What are you truly passionate about? What makes you different from everyone else?
Yeah, and it's about being consistent too. Like your resume, your online profiles, the way you interact with people, it should all tell the same story, a story that's compelling and memorable.
Totally. And don't be afraid to like let your personality shine through. People connect with authenticity, like when you're genuinely excited about something, it shows.
Yeah, for sure. The book suggests paying attention to things like your online presence, your professional network, how you come across in interviews.
Right? All of those little details matter,
Mm.
It's about being mindful of the impression you're making and making sure it aligns with, both your career goals and like who you are as a person.
Building a strong personal brand, it takes work, right?
Yeah.
But it's an investment that can really pay off.
Oh, absolutely. It can open doors to so many opportunities.
Okay, so let's talk about those times when you might be feeling, kind of stuck in a job that's just not fulfilling. Like you're working towards your dream career, but you're not there yet. How do you find meaning and purpose in what you're doing now?
The audio has some really good advice about this. They talk about how to love what you do until you're doing what you love. It's about shifting your perspective and finding ways to like bring joy and purpose into your current work.
I love that idea. Like
Mhm.
instead of seeing your job as something you have to endure, you reframe it as, a stepping stone, a chance to learn, a place to build connections.
Exactly. Like there's always something to be gained from any experience, right? Even if it's not your ideal situation.
The book also suggests things like, keep learning, taking on new challenges, building good relationships with your colleagues, finding ways to use your skills, even in small ways.
Right. Like there are always opportunities to grow and contribute, even if it's not in the exact way you might imagine.
And that can make a huge difference in how you feel about your work.
Yeah.
It can help you stay motivated and engaged, even when things are tough.
Totally. It's like instead of just waiting for that perfect opportunity to come along, you're actively creating a more fulfilling life for yourself right now. You're not just like passively waiting.
And speaking of staying motivated, let's talk about something that can be a real roadblock for people going through a career change. Fear, like the fear of failing, the fear of the unknown, maybe even the fear of, letting people down.
Oh, yeah. Fear is a big one. It can be so paralyzing.
Both of our sources talk about how fear is just a natural part of this whole process. It's okay to feel scared. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong.
Right. It just means you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, which is a good thing. The book talks about how a lot of our fear comes from like that negative self-talk we all do sometimes.
Yeah, telling ourselves we're not good enough, not smart enough, don't have enough experience, that inner critic can be so loud sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. It can really hold you back. But the audio has some really cool suggestions for like quieting that inner critic and dealing with fear, like using positive
Oh
affirmations
yeah, those can be so powerful.
and visualization, just imagining yourself succeeding, really feeling those positive emotions.
Yeah, like you're actually rewiring your brain.
Exactly. It's amazing how much our thoughts can influence our reality.
Totally. And even if you don't believe it at first, just keep practicing those positive affirmations.
Yeah.
Keep visualizing yourself succeeding. Like fake it till you make it.
Exactly. It really does work.
And the book also talks about the importance of taking action,
Yeah.
you know. Even if it's just baby steps. Like don't get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Right. Like, don't overthink it so much that you never actually do anything. Just start taking action, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect.
Action creates momentum.
Yeah. And it helps you learn so much faster.
And remember, you're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to have setbacks. That's just part of the process.
Exactly. So don't let that fear of messing up hold you back. Just keep moving forward.
I love that. One thing that really stood out to me in the audio was that idea of acting as if. Like, even if you don't feel like you're there yet, you start behaving like the person you want to be.
Oh, yeah, that's such a good one. And they had some amazing examples of people who, like, achieved incredible things, even though they didn't necessarily have, the traditional qualifications.
Oh, yeah. Like Ezra Cornell. He founded Cornell University, but he never even graduated from any school himself.
Seriously. That's crazy.
And then there's Thomas Edison. He only had like 3 weeks of formal education.
Oh,
Yeah. But he was just so curious and driven, and he totally revolutionized the world with his inventions.
it's amazing what you can accomplish when you set your mind to something, right?
Totally. And then there's Grandma Moses. She didn't start painting until she was like in her 70s, and she became this world-famous artist.
See, proof that it's never too late to go after your dreams.
I think that's what acting as if is all about. Like, you believe in yourself, you start taking action, you show up as that person you want to be, and like it just starts to become your reality.
Totally. Like you start attracting opportunities that align with that vision of yourself.
Like you're putting that energy out there into the universe and the universe responds.
Exactly. I love that.
The book also talks about, building a strong personal brand, especially in today's world. Like
Yeah.
what makes you stand out? What's your unique value?
Yeah, that's so important. It's not just about having a fancy website or, a cool logo.
Right. It's about being authentic, being genuine, letting your personality shine through.
Exactly. People can tell when you're being fake.
They suggest things like, paying attention to your online presence, your professional network, how you come across in interviews.
It's all connected, right? It's like you're creating this story about yourself, and you want that story to be compelling. You want it to be memorable.
Totally. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this part of the deep dive. What are some of the key takeaways that you're walking away with? What are you feeling inspired to do differently?
I think the biggest thing for me is just like the importance of taking action. Like it's easy to get stuck in your head, overthinking everything. But, at the end of the day, it's all about doing something, even if it's just a small step.
Yeah, action creates momentum,
Yeah,
and it helps you learn and grow so much faster.
exactly. What about you? What's resonating with you the most right now?
I'm really drawn to that idea of finding meaning and purpose in your current work, even if it's not your dream job yet.
Yeah.
Like, how can you shift your perspective and find those little things that bring you joy, you know?
Right, because even if you're working towards something bigger, you still got to live your life today, right?
Exactly.
And it's so much better to find ways to make your current situation, as enjoyable and fulfilling as possible.
I totally agree. And I think it's also important to remember that it's okay to ask for help. Like, reach out to your support system. Talk to people who inspire you. Get advice from mentors.
For sure. You don't have to do this alone.
So for you listening, what are some of the challenges you're facing in your own career journey? What are you struggling with? What are you excited about? We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights. We'll be back soon to wrap up this deep dive with even more strategies and insights for finding work that you truly love. Until then, keep those dreams alive. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of, changing careers and finding that work that truly lights you up. We've covered so much ground, from practical strategies to like some really deep philosophical stuff.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. And, in this final part of our deep dive, I want to touch on something that wasn't specifically mentioned in our source material, but it's been kind of swirling around in my head throughout this whole conversation.
Oh, I love those moments, like when something just clicks, you
Yeah.
know? So tell me, what's got you thinking?
Well, as we've been talking about all these different approaches to finding fulfilling work, the strategies, the mindset shifts, all of that, I keep coming back to this idea that maybe it's not about finding that one perfect job or, achieving some specific outcome.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
What if it's more about embracing the journey itself, like all of it?
Yeah.
The learning, the growth, the challenges, the setbacks, the moments of doubt, the triumphs, like the whole experience.
That's really resonating with me. It's like instead of focusing on reaching some fixed destination, you're embracing the ongoing evolution of, who you are and what you bring to the world.
Exactly. And that journey might involve, unexpected twists and turns, detours, maybe even some U-turns. It's about being open to new possibilities, adapting to changing circumstances, and always seeking ways to learn, grow, and make a positive impact no matter what you're doing.
So it's not just about what we do, but how we do it.
Precisely. It's about bringing our whole selves to our work, whether it's a paid position, volunteer work, or even, a creative project or a passion project. It's about finding meaning and purpose in the process itself, not just in the end result.
That's such a beautiful way to think about it. It kind of takes the pressure off, you
Yeah.
know? Like you don't have to have it all figured out. You can just embrace the messiness, the imperfection, and, ultimately the incredible rewards that come with finding your place in the world.
It's about trusting that the path will unfold as we move forward with courage, intention, and an open heart.
We've talked about so many practical strategies and tools for making a career transition, but I think you're right. It really all boils down to mindset, like cultivating a mindset of curiosity, growth, resilience.
Absolutely. And a willingness to embrace the unknown and trust that you have the inner resources to navigate whatever challenges come your way.
This deep dive has been so rich and inspiring. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on career transitions and finding work that I truly love.
It's been such a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
What stands out to you as the most important takeaway from our conversation?
For me, it's the importance of aligning your work with your values and your passions. When you do work that feels meaningful and purposeful, it's no longer just a job, right?
Yep.
It becomes an expression of who you are and what you care about. And that can make all the difference in terms of your overall happiness and fulfillment.
I couldn't agree more. Like when your work feels like an extension of yourself, you bring so much more energy and enthusiasm and creativity to it. It's just not the same when you're just going through the motions.
Exactly. So if you're feeling unfulfilled in your current work, take some time to really reflect on your values and your passions. Like what truly matters to you? What kind of impact do you want to make on the world?
And once you have a clearer sense of what you're looking for, don't be afraid to take action. Start exploring those new possibilities, connect with people in your field, and start taking those steps, no matter how small, to move you closer to your goals.
The journey might not always be easy, but I promise you it will be worth it.
This deep dive has given me so much to think about. What's one small step you can take today to move closer to your ideal work life?
You know what? I think I'm going to revisit my vision board and add some new images and affirmations that reflect, some of the insights I've gained from this conversation. It's a great way for me to stay focused on my goals and keep that motivation high.
I love that. I think I'm going to reach out to someone I admire in my field and ask for an informational interview.
That's fantastic. Remember, you are capable of amazing things. Trust your instincts, take action, and never stop learning and growing.
And never stop believing in the power of your dreams.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been such a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep diving deep.